A warm welcome to Anuradha Vedic Astrology. Today we have our guest lecturer, Penny Farrow, with us today. So, Penny, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Very auspicious, lovely week for the holiday of Diwali. So it's a joy to be together.
Thank you so much, Penny. Thank you so much. But before we start, thank you all of you for writing, sharing, subscribing, and liking our YouTube and our Spotify channels, and writing in your comments and your suggestions to us. In case you haven't subscribed to our channels, please do, and do remember to press the bell icons so that you can get the updates ASAP. So, Penny, what are we going to learn from you today?
Well, one of the most important things in any chart is the ability for the native to make use of all the auspicious combinations and to somehow turn the ones that aren't so auspicious a little more in their favor. And that requires this idea of kind of a utilization, an ability to navigate through the world, through the lemonade, through the lemons in a successful way. And that rests with the Lagna Lord. So the Lagna Lord is, so to speak, the captain of the ship, right, which is why I have a nautical background here. we're going to be on the high seas here, right, looking at how, what are ways that we could see that this is an empowered Lagnesha in a chart. And I'm only picking one way. There's many ways, but I hope to show one particular way that may be below the radar of some of the listeners. So that's the idea for today.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So let's get started. Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and, so here's our, here's our little analogy. The Lagnesha is the captain of the ship. The Lagna itself is more like the ship itself. Is it a beautiful ship? I gave this analogy in another one of our podcasts, that you could have a beautiful ship like the Titanic and a terrible captain who sinks it. So we're looking mainly now at the Lagnesha, and we're thinking about this idea of utilization. Whoops, got one too many slides there. Okay, so utilization implies a kind of native intelligence. There's many ways of evaluating intelligence, many categories. We talk about emotional intelligence. We talk about, of course, the buddhi, the IQ kind of intelligence. But what gets you through life most successfully is this native intelligence, this idea of sizing things up and progressing in just the right way, navigating through all the pitfalls of life. And again, this is a quality of the Lagna Lord. So any way that we can see in a chart, or any way that we can empower our clients' utilization ability through various means, suggestions, seva, prayers, upayas, we're moving that person towards the ability to navigate through life better, to learn from their mistakes. A weak Lagnesha kind of repeats the same script over and over and wonders why things aren't working out. But they don't have that knack, of catching the flow and learning how to catch the wind. And they're not good sailors to catch the wind in just the right way. So we're going to look at a particular yoga. It comes out of Paladipika, the sage's Mantreshvara. And in the 6th Adhyaya, he talks about a particular yoga that I nickname the following. I call it the lean on me yoga. So what does that mean? Well, it's a way where we could see if the Lagna Lord itself is not directly strong, and we all have different ways of evaluating whether it's a strong Lagnesha, but I think we could all agree that if the Lagnesha is Swarashi or it's Ucha, then it's strong, right? We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
So if it is, this yoga is still perhaps applicable and it just becomes stronger. But if it isn't, then it's very important to look for this particular combination. And I want to make perfectly clear to everybody, this isn't the only way that you could look at to see whether there's a strong Lagnesha. But it's a way that, as I mentioned, people might not know actually, or be aware of, and they may jump to conclusion that this person maybe isn't going to navigate well through the world. So that's why I wanted to talk about this particular one. So it's called Parvata Yoga. And a Parvata Yoga, the word Parvata means a mountain peak or a mountain. So it indicates something solid and something strong and something that has a loftiness to it. So it's now there are other yogas named Parvata yogas. It's something else your listeners may not know is that these are very evocative names, and different rishis will call a different combination a Parvata yoga or a Lakshmi yoga. And so you have to know out of which text. So Prashna also has a Parvata yoga, but the formation is completely different. So this is very particularly a formation whereupon we're going to have a borrowed strength. So it's as if you have a friend to lean on, right? We all need to have support system. So this is the Lagnesha support system. We can think of this yoga that way. Okay, let's check out how it's formed, and then I'll give you a couple of examples. So the formation of a Parvata yoga, we start, of course, with the dispositor of the Lagnesha.
Okay.
So maybe that is not a familiar term, so I'll just make sure everybody understands that. So the dispositor is the landlord of the Lagna Lord, the owner of the Rashi that the Lord of the Lagna is in. So let's say, there's a Leo Lagna, and the sun is not in the Lagna. The sun is in Sagittarius. Then Jupiter is the sun's dispositor. So I just want to make sure everybody has that lingo right. Okay?
Yes.
So we're not looking at the Lagnesha. I mean, we are going to look at the Lagnesha in order to just figure out what's up with the Lagnesha. Is it strong? Is it in a positive bhava? Is it negative bhava? All those things. Of course, we do look at that. But then we also always want to check the dispositor. So the first step in the formation of a Parvata yoga is to look at the dispositor of the Lagnesha. And then you want to ask whether that dispositor is swa or exalted. So what we're showing is this Lagnesha would have a strong friend to lean on, or the landlord is strong. So the landlord's you're going to live in my house, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure the house is in good condition. I'm going to make sure, even if you're a little late with your rent, all that kind of thing, right? So that it's a borrowed strength. It's not a direct strength. It's a borrowed strength. Okay, but there's something else. It's not just this. Then that same dispositor. So we're now analyzing the dispositor, not the Lagna Lord, but the dispositor. That same dispositor needs to be in a Kendra or Trikona. So not only does it need to be swa or exalted, it needs to be in a Kendra or Trikona. Now, there's one thing that my students always get confused about. If the Lagna Lord itself is in its own Rashi, Swa Rashi, it doesn't have a dispositor. It's not renting. It's in its own house, no landlord, it's not renting. So we don't form this yoga if the Lagnesha itself is Swa. We don't feel sorry for the owner of the house that we can't form this yoga, because it already means that Lagnesha is self-sufficient. So Swarashi in some ways has some qualities that may even be a little better than Ucha, because unless you're talking about Mercury, all the other grahas are Ucha, they're exalted, and someone else's, they all have a landlord. So even though they may be very strong, what if they have a really bad landlord? Then the roof might leak or something. So a Swarashi Graha is self-sufficient. That's the lovely thing about it. It has a kind of independence. I'm the lord of my castle, so we don't form Parvata Yoga if there is a Swarashi Graha. But any other situation, we do look for it. So what we're saying is this: if we have this situation in the chart, if we have a Lagnesha whose dispositor is either Swa or exalted, and in a Kendra or Trikona, either way, we have a strong underlying, perhaps hidden strength that people aren't really factoring in. And what it enables that particular native to do is to utilize. So whatever good combinations there are in the chart, that person is going to be more empowered to put them in motion in their lives, rather than be tossed around by the winds. So that's the idea behind it, a Parvata Yoga. So let's check out how this unfolds in a chart and why it's so consequential. So we're going to look at the chart, very famous chart of Angelina Jolie. So everybody knows who Angelina Jolie is, I assume. We use famous charts because usually there's something dramatic for teaching. So when we look at her chart, we see, of course, this beautiful Venus in the ascendant. Yes, it's lovely. It's completely unafflicted Venus, forming what Prashna calls Shubha Yoga. Beautiful. And Angelina Jolie is a very beautiful woman. We all know that. Very beautiful, very Venusian, all of that. But this is the ship, right? This isn't the captain of the ship. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get utilization out of a good Lagna itself, but the idea is that the Lagnesha is the doer. The Lagna itself is kind of just a static place, but the Lagnesha is the one that navigates us through our life. So if we look at her Lagnesha obviously is the moon. So this moon is not really great shakes of a moon here. It doesn't have much pakshabala. It's not quite a new moon, of course. But it's still within 72 degrees of the sun, and it's waning. So you might think, and then of course, there's some affliction to the moon. It's sitting with Saturn, it's sitting with Mars. Now, I'm sure you're very bright subscribers who know all about yogas, can see there's bunches of yogas here, all of that. However, you still need, for these yogas to really manifest, you still need utilization. You need a Lagna Lord that has something going for it. Otherwise, life just happens. The person doesn't really manage. They're not a good manager of their life. So what to do? Here she is, Cancer ascendant. And then, Chandra Lagna said it's a weak moon. It's not a strong moon. So like the, knight in shining armor, or
Jupiter.
We have Jupiter. So the dispositor, now I just want to make sure, because there may be some people that are more beginners, so I want to just make sure we get our lingo right. So the moon is the Lagnesha, but the Lagnesha is a landlord. The dispositor of the Lagnesha is that beautiful Jupiter. Now, Jupiter has its issues, it's an aspect of us, but that's not what we're going for here. We're going for a yoga, and the sage specifically says, if the dispositor is Swa or exalted, in this case, Jupiter is Swa, in a Kendra or Trikona, and in this case, it's in a Trikona, the person has Parvata Yoga. So Angelina Jolie is a utilizer. She knows how to navigate through her life very well, doesn't she? And this is important because she's either right in now or soon going into that Mundasha. So she had the good fortune of spending about 20 years in Venus Dasha. I say good fortune, it was very fortunate in many ways. In other ways, it was problematic. But she's Angelina Jolie. And so we have to realize something's got to be there other than just a pretty Venus in the ascendant. Agreed?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a very beautifully, this moon is also with the Yoga Karaka. So it also brings in that Yoga
Yes.
Karaka itself also brings in a lot of, um, bal or strength to the moon, along with this Jupiter, which is also a trine lord. So yes, it does give a lot of
Yeah.
support.
So the way I always, yeah, definitely. But yet Mars is still a malefic. It brings really good results for the bhavas it owns. As the owner of two positive bhavas, we talked about this last
Yes.
time. As the owner of two positive bhavas, this Mars is a yoga karaka we can count on because it's making all these yogas every which way.
Yes.
Tons of beautiful yogas in the zone. Remember we talked about in the zone?
Yes.
So it's making yogas, Raj yogas with Jupiter, two of them, Trikona Raj Yoga, Maharaj Yoga, 9 and 10, 5, 9, in the zone. They're all in the zone. And then Moon and Mars are making beautiful yogas all in the zone. This is, of course, but I will still say that a person could have nice yogas, but if they don't have a utilizing Lagna, if there isn't
Then the
some
yogas will
strength,
just fall flat. Yes, absolutely.
they fall flat. Yeah, they fall flat. Now, the next chart's going to illustrate a kind of caveat about this idea. And the next chart, also very famous, is the chart of Christopher Reeve, Superman.
Superman.
Yeah. It's another Cancer chart. Cancer charts are shining, right? Moon and Leo, sun charts tend to have this, this glow about them. So they house a lot of yogas. They actually house a lot of the Mahapurusha yogas. In fact, the Chaturashis have the most Mahapurusha yogas. So Cancer Lagnas, you see a lot of them in famous people. So here we go. He's a similar dasha sequence. He also hits a Venus dasha around 20 years old. But let's look at him in terms of utilization, and you're going to see a more dire situation than we saw with Angelina Jolie. Because Angelina Jolie had a Lagna that was only stabilized. Venus was there and Jupiter aspected. Very clean, beautiful ascendant. Here we have Rahu Ketu axis across the ascendant. No stabilization. There's no benefic anywhere in sight. And our Lagnesha, once again, although it's a waxing moon, it's not a strong moon. And then, of course, everyone I'm sure could see it's Nietzsche. It's a debilitated moon. And not only is it not a strong moon and debilitated, not strong, I mean by pakshabala, by visibility, but it's aspected by Saturn and it's with Mars. Now, I know that Mars and the moon also make beautiful yogas. However, Mars still is a natural malefic, and that will show up somewhere, somehow. However, you would think, how is this guy famous? How is this guy getting anywhere with such a weak Lagna Lord? Agreed? And an afflicted Lagna. So once again, the knight in shining armor called Parvata Yoga comes in. The moon is disposited by Mars. It's actually right there with Mars. And Mars is Swa in a trikona. Now, both of these examples have this in trikonas, but it could have easily been in a Kendra. Also, both of these examples, I don't want you to get the idea that the Lagnesha has to be with its dispositor. In both of these cases, it was with its dispositor. But Mars could have been here in Aries. And if it was, it would still be a Parvata Yoga.
Yes.
It would still be a Parvata Yoga. So that's important. All it requires is that the dispositor itself be Swa or exalted in a Kendra Trikona. No requirement that it be with the moon, aspecting the moon, or the Lagnesha. So here it happens to be. But this also is a problem in a way, because although the Parvata Yoga will fructify all the yogas in the chart, in their dashas, should those dashas run. And as I mentioned, he ran Venus dasha, beautiful Venus dasha. That Venus dasha, again, anchors unbelievable yogas. There's so many, many yogas there. And then, of course, Moon Mars, lots of yogas, but as the Venus dasha, he was able to actualize it all. When he went out of Venus dasha into the Sun dasha, that's when he had that terrible accident. And there are many reasons for that. It has to do with the Chidra grahas, it has to do with the Monica, all kinds of stuff, why he had that awful accident. But even with this weak Lagnesha, he could manifest those yogas in the Venus dasha. In the Moon dasha itself, very yogic, but the moon is sitting with and aspected by malefics. And so when a Parvata yoga is made by a malefic, that wasn't the case with Angelina Jolie. Her Parvata yoga was empowered by Jupiter.
Benefic.
But when a Parvata yoga is sits with a strong dispositor who's a malefic, who at the same time afflicts the Lagnesha, which is what's happening here, along with Saturn. So it's a double affliction. Then the person may not be safe from things like health issues. So just because a person's famous and these Raj yogas that Mars Moon are making, empowered by the Parvata yoga, because the moon now has that borrowed strength, all of that will be there. But at the same time, there may be some health issue. And he did pass away in his Moon dasha. I think it was a Saturn Bhukti, as I recall, which would be totally understandable. Saturn being Lagna Lord and the eighth Lord. It's a very difficult graha. Let me actually have his chart right here. Quick. Yeah, I just did a quick check, and it was in the, I was pretty sure I remember that right. It was in the Saturn Bhukti, yeah, which you would pick out as being very difficult.
Plan.
However, such a weak Lagna Lord, still able to give all of that fame, all of that rise, because of this idea of the borrowed strength of a strong dispositor. Now, it's very interesting because in all astrological circles, Western astrology, all of them, they always say, look at the dispositor for any graha, not just the Lagna Lord. Where did that come from? Did that come out of the air? No, I'm saying, I think it comes from this yoga or yogas like it, because the principles that we use all the time, they don't just kind of materialize out of nothing. So one example I always love to give my students is that we know that there's Shubha Karturi Yoga and Papa Karturi Yoga, right? When you get benefics on either side of the Lagna, or you get malefics on either side of the Lagna. And so, there is a very sound bhava vichara principle that anytime you have a graha or a bhava that's flanked by benefics, then that's very good. It stabilizes. Well, where did that bhava vichara principle come from? It came from Shubha Karturi Yoga. So one of the things that people may not, again, have above their radar, so to speak, is the idea that yogas are not only there to give their auspicious results in and of themselves, they're also a teaching lesson. Because many of our principles derive from these yogas. And so if we understand why and how they're formed, they're like a master class. One of my very dear Gurubhais always said that the yoga chapters are like a master class at the feet of the Rashi to determine what's auspicious in a chart. So in conclusion, I wanted to share this idea that utilization resides with the Lagnesha. And this is only one of many ways that we could pick up whether there's a utilizing Lagna. In fact, I did want to add that you can even go one more step beyond Parvata Yoga and look at the dispositor of the dispositor. And that's yet another yoga out of the same text, out of Mantreshwara's Palidipika. So hopefully Usually this makes people who have a strong dispositor for their Lagnatia very happy because it's, oh, well, I'm more empowered than I thought I was.
In fact, most of us would be now going on and checking our charts to see,
I
is
imagine
my
so.
dispositor strong enough? Yes, Penny, most of us would be doing that. So,
And I
we
also
hope
just do want to add one little piece to this, which is yogas often express what I like to call the platinum standard. So what if, just what if, the dispositor is exalted? It's not in a Kendra Trikona, but it's in a positive house, like the 11th house or the second house. Would you throw it all out? Say, ah, you're not strong at all. No, you would still say it's not perfect. It's not the letter of the law, but it's the spirit of the law. And so this is one problem with pressing a button and having the computer list all the yogas, because the computer will never think about the spirit of it or the environment of the chart that it's in. It's only the human consciousness that will look at it and be able to discern and make a decision that, you know what, this
it's
is
not
giving
strong,
strength
but
to
it's
that
good
Lagna.
enough. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It makes a difference. And we want to encourage people, anything that adds to a person's sense of empowerment and ability to navigate through their life is an encouragement. And so to just kind of niggle away at, yeah, it's not good enough, you do need to say, oh yeah, well, this is very close. So I'm going to tell this person, look, you got the goods, you can do this. And then give them some recommendations of how they could strengthen what they do have, perfect it.
Beautiful, Penny. It was really a very nice, nice study, and I'm sure most of us will make good use of it. And we'll see Penny again with another such pearl. Till then, thank you so much, Penny.
My pleasure. Happy Diwali to everybody.
Please hit the bell icon for fresh updates. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the videos, and please subscribe to our channel.